Hello and welcome to this special webinar from the Revolutionary Socialist Network. We're Speak Out of Ida Survivors, and we're going to be, our speakers are going to be exploring why, the government response to climate change has exacerbated this sort of disaster. My name is John Kay. I will be hosting today, and we will have a question and answer period afterwards. You can post your questions or ideas in the Q&A or the chat. And anyway, we'll move on. Our speakers today are Mike Howells, the New Orleans Katrina Survivor and Ida Survivor, and a member of the Revolutionary Socialist Network. Let's see. Kim Ford, Katrina and Ida Survivor, longtime New Orleans anti-racist and anti-corruption activist, president and CEO of the New Orleans Community Recallers Organization. Valerie Jefferson, Ida Survivor, president of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1560, and Paulino Bissember, Ida Survivor, member of the Jefferson Federation of Teachers and member of Workers' Voice. Well, first up, our speaker will be Mike Howells. And go ahead, Mike.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, hi, I'm Mike Howells, and I'm going to give the introduction to this talk. First, I want to let everybody know that one of our speakers, Bo Hammer, who is in the heart of the disaster zone in Lafourche Parish, couldn't be on today because their internet got knocked out. So that he wants to be here, but he can't, but that's one of the challenges of having somebody speak from the disaster zone. Now I'd like to just begin with my my little spiel. All right, first of all, let's understand this. Climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of major climate disasters, of which Hurricane Ida is one of them. And let's be clear, the class struggle goes on when the disaster hits and during the recovery period after the disaster. It doesn't stop. That's why the ruling class sends what I call its own disaster recovery team. These are basically people who are with government agencies and they're bureaucrats, disaster capitalist enterprises, and their professional staff and nonprofit organizations and their paid organizers. They all work as a team because they're funded directly or indirectly by Washington, and their job is to see to it that the recovery that happens after the disaster is a disaster recovery that meets with the seal of approval of the ruling class. This isn't a helter-skelter idea. Now, the main question of determining the outcome of this disaster recovery has everything to do with how well or poorly organized the working class in the disaster zone is during this. Now, while we have, obviously, being in the working class and socialists, we have material interests that are in conflict with those of the ruling class. And so either we organize our own disaster recovery team, or we get the recovery that the ruling class wants to put on us. And being a Katrina survivor, I know that that's not good news for working class and middle class disaster survivors. Now, so the main question here is whether in a crisis, a disaster climate crisis, the working class is in a position to organize a weather climate disaster, a working class disaster recovery team. And this requires some work. The Washington isn't going to do it for us. We have to organize it ourselves. And that's one of the biggest challenge probably that is raised by a major disaster. And there's no question that Hurricane Ida is a major disaster. According to the official figures, in less than 24 hours, Hurricane Ida inflicted $65 billion worth of property damage on Louisiana. In addition, Hurricane Ida knocked out power to 1.1 million people who live in New Orleans and live in the southeastern part of Louisiana. In addition, and this is just all from one storm, more than 90,000 or about 90,000 homes in the New Orleans metropolitan area sustained serious or severe damage. In addition, 10,000, well, I mean, tens of thousands, not just 10,000, but tens of thousands of homes in the Ida disaster zone were destroyed. And then finally, something of special importance for us because we're socialist, is that overnight, tens of thousands, perhaps over 100,000 workers in the disaster zone lost their job. We know from official stats that 41,000 people have applied for Ida-related disaster recovery unemployment, but we also know that's only a fraction of the people who lost their jobs, because in reality, the situation is such where there are many people who aren't in a position to file for unemployment. Some of them are like undocumented workers, people who work under the table, people who had just gotten a job right before the storm, people who didn't have unemployment for, I think it was 2019. I mean, they didn't fill their taxes in 2019 or were unemployed in 2019. Those people can't get it. So we know it's well over 40,000, probably over 100,000. So those are all problems we have to deal with. And of course, the big one was 33 people died. And that is, of course, the biggest tragedy of this storm. So the question is, how does the working class respond to this disaster so it doesn't have to take whatever crumbs the ruling class is willing to throw at us? Now, unfortunately, we don't have a disaster recovery team in Louisiana today. And what do I mean by the disaster recovery team is it's like the axle which the wheel of working class resistance to disaster austerity is what I call it, kind of guides things, or at least it's a point where people who are working class and middle class disaster survivors can converge, network, organize, and bolster their morale, which is very needed in that situation because many disaster survivors, most are traumatized. But also it's a way to analyze the situation, think of what are the most effective positions. And basically it's a way to build a movement where we take foot soldiers and turn them into generals, and people can become both foot soldiers and generals to do what needs to be done to win, to represent the working class, middle class side of the disaster recovery cycle. Now, the reality is, though, as I said, in New Orleans at this point in time, the level of political organization is really low. And at least the level of political consciousness, I should say, is really low on the left. And we haven't had this idea of a disaster recovery, a working class disaster recovery team materialize. But we did have something like that after Hurricane Katrina. So this is possible. We had what was called the People's Hurricane Relief Fund Oversight Coalition. And there were a lot of problems with that. But anyways, we had that. That was something set up by two pre-existing community organizations. That would be the Community Labor United, and the other faction would be the C3 Hands Off Iberville. Now, as a result of the crisis, the two factions were mainly focused on housing for the first year. The Community Labor United was focused on private housing. C3 Hands Off Iberville was focused on public housing. The battle was for the right of return. That's how we operated. Now, I think a big challenge now in the coming disasters is to make sure that groups on the left have discussed the need for organization after the disaster that hits that's suited specifically to the disaster situation. And that's what the group I'm referring to was set up for. Now, I really believe that once we have these organizations, it's possible to reach out and to connect with people. There are people all over the disaster zone. They're not happy, but they're there. You can go either, well, of course, everybody's going to try to reach them on internet, but to meet new people and to build up, you have to go to places where the disaster survivors congregate. And that would be like the relief stations, disaster emergency shelters, a few stores that are open, any sort of official public disaster meetings. And those are all targets for connecting and networking with people. So some of them can also later be targets, especially the official public meetings, for actions. But in addition, I think from our experience with Katrina, we learned a few basic lessons. And those basic lessons are, first, you need to run the disaster team or working class disaster team, which is really a mass organization open to everybody, in a democratic and transparent practice. Everybody needs to vote, needs to debate, and all, especially the money, needs to be kept transparent. It's on the table. Otherwise, the movement's likely to be eaten alive by opportunists because they're all over the place after a disaster. In addition, what we need to do is have a few basic demands ready even before the disaster. And some of those basic demands are, and you can be sure this will happen. One, there will be a need for the right of everybody to have emergency relief housing for as long as necessary. And that's the key, emergency relief housing for as long as necessary. But also, for the sake of keeping people in the disaster zone, because the people who are pushed out of the disaster zone are generally working class and middle class people, we need to bring them into the disaster rebuilding process and give every one of them the right to participate in rebuilding in the disaster zone with a living wage, all right? Because they need to make survival, otherwise they're gonna get pushed out. I could go on, but in addition, we have the case of like the fight for food stamps. But I really don't have the time to do that right now, but we need to have some demands, and I can provide them another forum that are just kind of like blueprint demands, and they can be tailored to whatever the specific crisis is and the situation that arises out of the specific crisis. But what I think above all else, I want to get across is that we don't want to go into a situation where we have to rely on just on the crumbs that the official disaster relief team is going to throw us, because they will always shortchange. I mean, their rhetoric is to make everybody whole, but that's not really their job. Thank you.
It's time, Mike. Thank you. Our next speaker, Kim Ford, Katrina Survivor and Ida Survivor, longtime New Orleans anti-racist and anti-corruption activist, president and CEO of the New Orleans Community Recallers Organization. Kim, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be able to sit on this distinguished panel. It's just an honor for me. Just so much going on. I'm sorry, guys. And now as we go through the rigmarole all over again of trying to survive after another natural disaster. And I tell you guys, I really felt some type of way that I have encouraged so many people to come back to a community that really showed that they did not want us to come back in the aftermath of Katrina. Not only did I come back, my family came back. My husband, my mother, my sister, my disabled sister. My mother's 86. Oh my God. And then when this happened all over again, and to see them suffering so all over again, I really feel like I have failed my community by not being even more verbal about recovering from Katrina, and that I have tried to be more peaceful and complacent and encouraging the leadership to do the things that needed to be done so that we don't find ourselves in another situation like we are right now in the aftermath of Ida, where they build substandard housing in my community, substandard housing in my neighborhoods, all over adjoining parishes here in New Orleans, here in Louisiana, that they were building substandard housing, and that they tore down housing that was built to last, to withstand the severity of a hurricane that would right now still be operational and still be protective of the citizens in this community. That and I have to take some responsibility, just like we all do as citizens. We have to take some responsibility for these things that have befallen us, especially if you have been sitting home and being silent during this oppressive state. You got to stand up and speak up. We all do. We all have to come together and fight for justice for ourselves, or else we will continue to be treated like we have been, you know. And I tell you, even right now, and it's just so much that I want to say, because I'm dealing with FEMA right now. FEMA, I used all of my savings to pay for housing in the aftermath of Ida, because we had to vacate the community. We did not have any electricity. And I don't know, and we still have so many people who don't even have air conditioning and refrigerators, modern conveniences, but necessary. I had a FEMA leader to tell me last week that the fact that my refrigerator was covered with maggots, they don't see any urgency in helping me to replace my refrigerator, because the federal government feels like it's okay for me to live out of an ice chest. I said, my husband has to have a refrigerator to store his insulin. You know what I'm saying? We have health issues. So FEMA requested that I go to my doctor's office and get medical statements to prove that what I was saying was truthful. And so we being treated by a government who automatically finds us guilty. And we have to prove that we are worthy of receiving assistance. So we have no other alternative except to organize and work together to help our government to do those things that they are supposed to do. And to come out and say, I feel like FEMA has spent more money paying for their staff to live off the luxury of the lamb here in one of the tourist capitals of the world. They getting the best of the best in accommodations while the community continues to suffer. And it's unconscionable, and how our elected leadership can be silent throughout this tragedy that has befallen this community yet again. And every time I go to FEMA, is so horrible to me. But when the leader of this, wasn't just the staff, this was the supervisor over the whole center over in a public library here in New Orleans, which is where our FEMA headquarters is located. He told me that the federal government feels like I can get hot ice to put in my cooler, and that's sufficient for me to live by. And I was just so outdone. I'm so humiliated as I sit here and talk to you by the behavior of FEMA throughout this yet another time again. Because y'all know, if y'all don't know, we went through some things after Katrina, because Katrina was really one of the first major disasters that we have had that really brought our infrastructure to its knees here in New Orleans. And then for us to have to deal with this yet again. So come next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, I will every day sit out in front of the New Orleans main library on Loyola and Tulane Avenue and set up a booth there to be able to talk with citizens in the community about the experiences that they are having with FEMA. Because I know I'm not the only one that has been humiliated by the staff and by the operations there at FEMA. And it's not the staff as much as it is the leadership. Because I spoke to my congressman who told me that they meet with FEMA regularly. And I said, well, if y'all meeting with them regularly, I'm not hearing about what the outcomes of those meetings are, because from what I see, FEMA has done everything in their realm to deny qualified citizens from receiving support. And that just didn't happen with this disaster. It also happened with Katrina. And also we found out during Katrina that those people who were getting assistance from FEMA, I'm just going to come right out here and say it, because y'all know I keep it real, that the assistance that is happening with FEMA is very racially backed, and it's very socially supported. So if you know somebody who knows somebody, then yeah, you're going to get help. And that is not the way it should be. That is immoral. That is immoral. To those in need, if you can't help those, don't come here faking like it, because Kim Ford is about to go down there to, I'm about to go over there to Tulane and Loyola and sit outside and with my sign and encourage others to come down and help me to fight. Because the only thing that can hold government accountable are its citizens. And if we continue to be silent, then guess what? That's what we're going to get. FEMA has shown us that. They have no conscience at FEMA. The things that they have done to humiliate me, and it's not just me, it's anybody who goes down there. And I don't want somebody to just come out and say, well, oh, you Kim Ford, this, that, and other. No, that's not how I work. I say everybody needs to be treated fairly. We all need to be treated fairly, regardless to who you know or how you know it. We still need to be treated fairly. Okay? And anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm 504-248-8594. I'll put my contact information in the chat and the emails, and I'm asking you to come down and help me to organize around the issues that we face in that FEMA, the issues that we face in with our current leadership. We have voting coming up here in New Orleans. We need to come together and talk about who we elected. Because I tell you what, I didn't see any of our elected officials having to go to FEMA. Matter of fact, when I go to FEMA, I see very few white people there at all. I see poor Black people trying to go to FEMA, trying to get assistance, and they're not getting it. They're not getting it. And anybody who needs to go to FEMA shouldn't have to be racially motivated. That shouldn't have to be it at all. Everybody deserves to be treated fairly. Across the state of Louisiana, we got to come together, because that's the only thing that either halfway got us some justice after Katrina, is when we started organizing and speaking up for ourselves. But our leadership has moved into a place where they're isolating themselves away from the community. So we're the ones who have to take over and come back and have our voices heard. Thank you guys. I appreciate being here. I'm honored to be here with you today.
So much, Kim. Our next speaker is Valerie Jefferson, Ida Survivor, and President of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1560. Take it away, Valerie.
Thank you, John and Paulino, for inviting me here. Yes, I represent the bus drivers, the rails, that's the streetcar operators, paratransit, administration, transit of RTA in New Orleans. We are truly Ida survivors. We also truly Ida helpers. When the Mayor Contrell had asked RTA to come and assist her with the surviving of New Orleans in the aftermath of Ida, the operators showed up. We forsake our needs. We forsake our emergency personal needs, our families, our homes, because we know what our job is. We know that we are the frontliners. We know that we are the essential workers of New Orleans in transportation. We know that we pick up our precious passengers from A and we take them to B. So we showed up. We had cooling stations. We had electric on our buses for the passengers to get on the bus, cool themselves off, drinking cold water, plug up their phones for they can talk to their family and their friends. So we was there. After that, we had a strong issue with RTA. RTA and the union labor, that's ATU, had signed agreements. RTA did not honor their agreement. So right now we are in the midst of, I want to say, fixing the situation or solving it, because it's in a blunt, I want to say a blunt stop of having a good relationship for we can move transportation forward in New Orleans. So in the near future, I know that the CEO and I, we're supposed to sit down and have a conversation. I hope after this conversation that everything will be solved or we'll be moving forward in a positive manner. But right now, we do have operators that's out, that's tested positive. We have operators that's going through issues with their insurance, with FEMA, like Sister Kim said, with FEMA. But at the same time, we are trying very hard to be available for RTA to keep New Orleans rolling, because we know our job is. We just asking RTA to take care of us. If RTA take care of us, we will take care of this city. We have the support of Mayor Contrell. We have the support of City Transportation Committee. So when RTA do not take care of us, we will knock on the mayor door. We will knock on the city councilman door, because we need somebody to take care of us. We are human beings too. We have families. We are caretakers. We are 90% Black African Americans. We are young, 40 years and younger. So we are looking up to this city to take care of us, make RTA accountable of their action toward us, because we are not robots. We did not sign up this job to die. We need for RTA to take care of us. That's all I have to say. I thank you for this opportunity to bless us to come here for you can hear our side of the story. Our voice need to be heard just like everybody else, because we are very valuable to this city. We need RTA to realize that their employees are valuable. The operators cannot make it without the mechanics. Mechanics cannot make it without administration. Administration cannot make it without the operators. So all of us are in this, I want to say, in this lane together. We need to respect one another. Anytime that either party do not respect each other, this will not roll. Like the hospitality. Hospitality need us. We need hospitality. Just like Kim organization, just like the teachers, everybody in this boat together. That's how I look at it. So if we don't speak up, who will speak up for us when we don't speak up? I'm gonna quote this Dr. West, then I'm be finished. Dr. West said, Cornell West, I'm speaking of. He said, justice is expressing love publicly. That means that if we don't stand and fight for justice, we are not showing love to our brothers and sisters publicly. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie. And our final speaker is Paulino Bissember, Ida Survivor, Jefferson Federation of Teachers member, and Workers' Voice member. Go ahead, Paulino.
All right, thank you, John, and to the RSN for hosting this really important event. And like the other speakers, I'm very grateful to be here, and you know, especially among fighters like you all. I'm glad we're in this together, like Ms. Valerie was just saying. So, as John said, my name is Paulino Bissember. I'm an ESL educator teaching immigrant youth. I live in New Orleans, and I am a member of the JFT Union and member of Workers' Voice. La Voz de los Trabajadores. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what folks in my community and my neighborhood specifically did right after, during and right after the storm. And then I want to talk a little bit about more of what are some steps that we can take and what kind of future can we be fighting for. So first, I kind of think about it in the terms of sort of building connected communities of solidarity during times of crises. The climate catastrophe and the pandemic revealed that working class people cannot depend on the government to provide the basic needs of the people, just like we've been hearing about. So we need to think about how do we actually build those bonds of trust and solidarity in our communities that can extend and allow us to kind of fight together, just like our sisters were just saying. So I think about this in sort of a perspective of mutual aid, but going beyond that. Like the Black Panthers Party called their survival programs, but the full name was Survival Pending Revolution Programs. So what does this mean? Mutual aid is used so that we have the resources to learn, organize, and fight. It's not a revolutionary strategy in and of itself. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about what we did in our neighborhood during Hurricane Ida, but also how to politicize it even more. So we have this neighborhood block initiative. I live in Mid-City in New Orleans with some folks from my neighborhood who are involved with what's called the Good Trouble Network, local organization of service industry workers supporting racial justice, prison reform, and abolition projects. We all kind of came together organically when the power went out and food from restaurants were going to spoil. So many of my neighborhoods all work in the restaurants, and we were without power for about 4 or 5 days before my family and I ended up evacuating. So what we did was we focused on getting all of the perishable products, especially meat, cooked, served, and distributed in our neighborhood, in the Central Business District, and in La Place. We served about 100 people in our neighborhood, which is, a gentrifying community, but currently mixed income with a strong Central American immigrant community as well. We got 100 meals out of La Boca, which is a restaurant in the Central Business District. Mostly they were houseless folks who we were feeding, and then 100 more meals in La Place, which is part of the so-called Cancer Alley petrochemical corridor, which was one of the most hardest hit towns of the river parishes during the storm. So what does it mean to politicize this really rewarding experience? We had restaurant and education workers in our food distribution efforts. Now we're so much better poised to support one another's struggles and to actually take collective action together, because through this process, we were able to build that trust, right? And in fact, the very same service workers that I'm talking about now ended up coming out to our school board meeting to protest the exploitation of teachers and other education workers post Ida, when they were trying to, like Miss Valerie was just talking about, when the district was trying to unilaterally make changes to our contract, take away vacation, extend the school year, all this type of stuff. So through this effort, we were able to get to know each other, but also think, how do we actually support each other when we're in struggle? But I want to think, what would have it meant if we were able to build connections with the Entergy workers, with Entergy is the monopoly energy company here in Louisiana, also in Texas as well, with the sanitation workers, right? Who we saw, garbage was not getting picked up. Sanitation workers have been struggling for a long time, have been fighting for justice, for fair wages, right? They were fighting for a union, and transit workers during this time of crisis. And actually we're able to move these communities together and respond collectively. Imagine being able to activate these connected communities of working class solidarity through struggle, not only feeding people who need it, but massifying a coordinated strike movement across our industries, across education, service, energy, transit, waste management, to respond to the root causes of the hurricane's destruction, which is this capitalist system that only values profit at the expense of people. From our experience, we know we can feed and connect with hundreds of people during a crisis in a matter of days. So what can we do when the lights are on? So I want us to think now a little bit, or I want to talk a little bit about sort of what a roadmap to a safe, sustainable, and full future for working people. We need to have a transition to clean energy with worker and community control, a rapid and emergency transition to this clean energy, including solar and wind power. We need to keep fossil fuels, including uranium, in the ground and nationalize the fossil fuel companies and the grid, and use the funds to transition to worker and community control energy systems. It makes me think about the failure of Entergy and the capacity of line workers who were able to restore power after the storm. Agroecological systems development and an end to subsidies to big agro businesses. So this is kind of looking at the different food systems and including an end to the dangerous monoculture of farming and industrial livestock breeding as well. And then how can we transfer these funds and more to the emergency development of agroecology, which is kind of like small farming based on community knowledge and community practices and experiences that can produce cleaner food, sequester atmospheric carbon in the soil. And we also need to have reparations for Black farmers who have been historically excluded from agricultural programs. We need union safety provisions and wages for farm workers and networks of worker and community control over food sovereignty. And I'm thinking a little bit now about what Ms. Kim Ford was just saying around housing, which is so important in this process as well. We need an equitable land use and housing program. We need to end the commodification of and the speculation on land. Land should be taken away from big businesses, industrial farmers, and real estate interests and returned to indigenous communities for stewardship, redistributed to millions of small farmers who want to practice carbon sequestrating agriculture, and to public programs to build sustainable and affordable housing for those without, including climate refugees, fleeing fires, floods, and hurricanes, like we saw here in Louisiana. We even saw from last year from Lake Charles with the storms that we still see people who are in crisis and need a place to live, right? So this, as the brothers and sisters on the call were talking, this is something that goes beyond the crisis, right? And the response to it. So how do we pay for this and plan it? Let's take away money from the war budget to actually build the mass, clean, free public transportation systems that will free working people from the expenses of the car and free the planet of 40% of the carbon emissions that are threatening our own survival. And who are the people who should be doing this? The workers, the ones like Ms. Valerie over here and all her coworkers who know what the systems are like. And when we're talking with our communities to actually know where do we need those services? How do we plan it? So that's when we talk about deciding the routes of travel by democratic assemblies of working people who refuse to be routed into segregated communities, low-wage jobs by planners, subordinate to industry and real estate barons. We need a massive jobs program for emergency transition to unemployed and underemployed people. And such work can include restoring forests, wetlands, and other buffers to the rising sea, intensifying storms, resettling survivors of climate disasters to safe and sustainable homes, upgrading our buildings and urban infrastructure to protect residents from these dangerous heat waves, like we were all experiencing right after the storm, how hot it was. That's what the cooling stations that Miss Valerie was referencing, right? The buses were actually serving as a place for people to get away from the heat, and the intensification of air pollutants that come with it. We need to declare the climate crises a public health emergency and socialize medicine so that all victims of the climate crisis, of the pandemics and the poisonings of our water and our land and air are treated with the best healthcare possible. We need to begin with Black, Latinx, immigrant and indigenous communities who have been disproportionately deprived of this just treatment. And that makes me also think of the response from FEMA, right? What Ms. Kim Ford was talking about is exactly right. Many poor and Black folks have been disregarded, left out, while other people actually get those benefits. So that's why we need to think about an equitable redistribution for this as well. Mm-hmm. And for a crash program to train nurses and doctors without their incurring impossible debt, an end to the exploitation of for-profit hospitals and facilities, and an end to a privatization of healthcare centers and facilities for senior care. Also, we need to think about the gender inequities in the world that exists and prevent women from bearing the greatest burden of this transition. From the chaos and disasters of climate change and the pandemics, with massive subsidies to safe and enriching 24/7 childcare and elder care. We need a real political party of working class people that's focusing on supporting the needs of the many, supporting working class folks, and a workers' government for a mass political party of working people who can lead this emergency fight for this transition, take power out of the hands of the corporations and big businesses who have brought us to this place of crisis and danger. A government of working people could begin to reorder society, plan production to meet human needs rather than induce chaos for profit. So I'll leave it at that. This is why we fight for socialism. We fight for community control, workers' rights, workers' voices to be heard, and organizing together to actually build a just future. So thanks again. Looking forward to the comments and discussion, and we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Paulino. We'll open it up for discussion. If folks have questions, you can post them in the chat or the Q&A, or you can write. I prefer, if you want to speak, say stack in the chat. And we'll start with, there's one in the Q&A from Eric Slater. Can President Jefferson talk about how she was illegally fired and management refused to honor their agreement with the ATU while the transit workers made sacrifices to keep public transit running during Ida? How can working people help return President Jefferson to work and force management to respect the elected representative of the workers' union?
Okay. Okay, that's a question for me.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you. Who asked that question? Thank you. I really appreciate it. I will be very vague on it because I want to say RTA and myself, we're supposed to be discussing this tomorrow. So I don't want to, I want to say speak something that will hurt or harm me and the union, my brothers and sisters in labor. Yes, I did get terminated when I went up there, and I went to the CEO office and I questioned him about his termination, because his termination affected the, I want to say, the relationship between the union and the company. The union and the company at that time had a good relationship. We come up with a strategy plan for we can keep the service out there on the street for our passengers. Now our TA do not have enough of service out there on the streets because the union and the company do not have a good relationship right now because of my termination, and plus because of some operators are out sick with COVID, or they have their family member, close family member out sick with COVID, and our TA do not have the parts for the buses. But for my termination, we will discuss that tomorrow. I will discuss that tomorrow with our TA, but I'm still terminated. At this day, I'm still terminated. I do not know will our TA will hire me back But now I'm on the second level grievance. I have to go through the grievance process just like everybody else. But I know for a fact I was unjustly terminated. I was not terminated according to the relationship between labor and company. I was not terminated because of my personality or my, I want to say my position. My position at that time when I was speaking to the CEO, I was representing labor, the membership, because of what we've been through. RTA asked for our presence. We showed up. Over 150 drivers showed up for the city of New Orleans. RTA reneged on their agreement. And the person who made that plan with labor with me was terminated. So yes, I was upset about it. Yes, I questioned RTA about it. RTA got upset because I questioned him about it. Anybody that mess with my brothers and sisters that's out there working, yes, I would fight for them. Yes, I would speak up for them. Ain't no ifs and buts about it. So that's it with my termination, because I am getting kind of warm on a Sunday and I don't want to get warm today. So I hope I answered the question best of my ability. Thank you.
Well, we have a question here from Jay Arena. Turning your volume on, Jay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Jay Arena. I'm also a Katrina Survivor and International Luxembourgist Network. And my question's for my comrade, Mike Howells, but maybe some of the other folks can chime in as well. But I really appreciated Mike's presentation on C3, which was a very important class organization fighting the ruling class disaster capitalism agenda. And they combined, as Mike explained, opposition to the disaster capitalism with an alternative program, right? They called for jobs, free public services, equal rights for all, and making the rich pay. But it was a tough slog. One, because of the NGOs who were funneling people into self-help projects. And then nationally, it did not resonate, the disaster conditions with the whole country. Now, and this is central to my question for Comrade Howells, is now the country, in many ways, the world is New Orleans post-Katrina. It's a disaster, and the potential for building a class-wide fight back with common demands, as Luxembourg talked about, which are crucial for building the groundwork for a mass strike, seem to be much more favorable compared to the 2005. But it appears we still have some of the same obstacles. And I appreciated Paulino's presentation and the argument for the broad demands. But the post-pandemic, or during the pandemic, the focus has all been on self-help. It seems like a throwback to 2005 in New Orleans and Katrina. So it does seem we have the potential for the working class to agree on a broad working class fight back. More than in 2005, but we still have some of those obstacles there. So I just wanted Comrade Howells' perspective on that. And finally, just to invite everyone to the International Luxembourgist Network's series, the first one next Saturday, I'm going to post in the box, and it's about building that mass strike process in the current crisis. Thanks.
Okay, should I talk now?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think what in recent years, we've gotten hung up on the idea of this coalition model of organizing. And to a certain extent, it's absolutely necessary. You do need to try to get groups together. But when it comes to trying to mobilize people, if you're just going to have a coalition and just the leaders of the organizations in the coalitions have a real say over what the policies are, what actions will happen, like we've been having a lot lately, then we've got a situation where we're not able to transform rank and file militants or new militants into people who are both foot soldiers and leaders. But that requires a democratic process. That requires a transparent process. And yes, we have to work within the traditional coalition model. That seems to be what we're working with now. But if we can't transcend that model, then we will not be able to politicize a whole and radicalize a whole new generation of people, be they disaster survivors or whatever, because they're going to get turned off. They want to feel like they're part of the movement. They want to feel like they're a leader as well as a follower. They want to feel they're there for more than just carrying your protest banner, which is good. But again, we want to be both the leader and the followers. But what I've found recently in New Orleans, I don't know about other cities, but is the organizations that are set up to be, quote, progressive and radical, and I attend their protests and stuff, they're very hierarchical and undemocratic, much more so than we had after Hurricane Katrina. Now, I think this is in part the influence of the nonprofit organizations, part the influence of certain ideological groups. But one thing we used to have a focus on in this city was organizing citywide. And not just organizing the organizations, because really they're only a tiny part of the total population, but also organizing the people, because we know the strength is in numbers. And if you don't have a democratic and transparent process, you can't organize the people. And I at least for any length of time, they'll go to protests for a while and they'll just burn out. And what I think we need here to focus on, as far as disaster capitalism, as far as disasters go, is yes, people ahead of time need to pick up the ball. Maybe when you're having forums on climate change, for instance, and discuss how do we need to prepare for a climate disaster, meaning the working class? How do we need to be able to mobilize the people in a time of crisis? How do we adapt to the radically changed tempo of the class struggle when a disaster hits? And that's what I talk about disaster recovery teams. It isn't like I've got this organizational fetish. It's just basically some sort of mass organization that gives everybody an opportunity to, they'll be driven by anger and whatnot. In addition, to feel like they can go there as equals and they can be heard about their demands. And together we can reach decisions that reflect what the community at large thinks, at least the active community. And that's what I'm trying to with my talk here, is to sensitize the ability of socialists, because it's mostly socialist working class people here, to the radical change in the tempo of the class struggle. And we need to think about that beforehand. Otherwise, we'll end up in messy situations where, the ruling class will give us, the people are supposed to get us out of this disaster, but listening to Kim, Valerie, other people, Paulino, we're not going to get out of it that way. And we're going to get fleeced. And yes, we want a revolution, but this side of the workers' revolution, we have to have organizations and organize ourselves in times of crisis, as any other times, organize effectively, because we can make some real breakthroughs in the class struggle for the working class. But that requires we know how to organize. And I think that is something, based on what I see now with Hurricane Ida and with most other disasters, is people just operate on the assumption that, well, obviously they're shocked, they're traumatized, they're brutalized, all sorts of things. But we have to operate with that reality and know that we can tap into that anger, frustration, and indignation and funnel it in a direction which raises the dignity and the power of the people, in this case, working class, middle class disaster survivors. That's why mainly the focus, what I call a working class disaster recovery team. It could be whatever you want to call it. But some organizations, some focus, some wheel people can identify with in a crisis. Okay, thank you, Jay. I think that'll be it for me.
All right. Are there any more Folks want to ask questions? Is there any more discussion?
I like to say that, my heart goes out to my comrade because I know the bullying that takes place when you have stepped into a leadership position and you are not willing to succumb to the bullying that follows that. And it's because people have been doing so bad for so long that they become accustomed to behaving in a certain manner. But I have worked with you, Val, and I know your demeanor, and I am so sad to hear what has befallen you. And the only thing that can make RTA do what it's supposed to do is the power of the people. And I know that the drivers love you. I know that the people love you. And I'm definitely willing to sit and support however I can in any way that I can. If you want me to sit in that meeting with you tomorrow, I'm willing to do that. Don't go by yourself, because we don't go by ourselves. We have to go with a team. So put me on your team, Val, list me on your team, and however I can support, I will.
Thank you so much, Sister Kim. I appreciate it. You always have given us support. You always have been fighting for the people. That would draw me to you. I am so excited being on this panel with each one of you all, because we are the voices of the silenced one that's cry in the silenced one that cry at night. We see their pain, we feel their hurt. So it's up to us to stand on righteousness, fight for justice, in spite of what kind of arrows is thrown at us, in spite of what people try to do us. Someone needs to speak for us all, because all of us are important. Everybody is important. Thank you, Kim, for that.
We have a question here from Blanca from Workers' Voice. Are there any concrete initiatives the speakers can start working together on, given that there is agreement on building a bottom-up working class resistance in New Orleans?
Well, okay, I'd like to hear what other people say. Mike Howells, I've got some ideas.
Why don't you kick it off, Mike, and then we can take it from there.
Well, okay, how about I talk now? All right. I think first of all, as far as a bottom-up idea, this forum came out of what we've been planning forever, called the Ida Survivors Town Hall Speak Out. This is a opportunity where working class, middle class survivors, anyone else, but all the disaster survivors can come and speak their minds in an environment that's supportive of them, and that's not in the pocket of the official disaster recovery team. This is a starting point for creating the dialogue that's necessary for I think would be a good starting point for building, figuring out what are the demands that people really want. Are they willing to fight for? But I think that would be a good thing to start having an Ida Survivors Speak Out, certainly work for a town hall as the next, a Louisiana, I guess, town hall, because that is very important, because as Valerie and others and Kim have mentioned, many people in the working class that are just not heard. And the whole purpose of these Ida Survivors Speak Out would be to give the people, the working class, all the disaster survivors, an opportunity to be heard, and heard uncensored, unfiltered. I can't tell you how many times I've been to meetings where just expressing what you want to express is censored, is filtered, and that is so disempowering. And so that would be one of my focuses here, is having Ida Survivors Speak Out next, with a focus on the disaster zone right here in Louisiana. I'm sure in New Jersey and New York, they could have the same thing up there. And if, say, San Francisco gets hit with a big quake or a fire, they could do it anywhere, but that's the starting point. You need to give people an opportunity to speak, to express what they're feeling. And it isn't a petty bourgeois thing or whatever some people think. It's an absolute necessity if you want to bond with the people, to listen to them. Not to always agree with them, but to listen to them. And that's what these are about. And I think it's a good starting point. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you,
agree.
Mike.
I agree with Mike. I return back to, someone asked about historic examples of situations where working people stepped in to organize and in a response to a crisis. Well, in the aftermath of Katrina, I ended up in Fort Worth, Texas, and then just out of sheer frustration, took the people that I was in a hotel with. We went down to the city council meeting and spoke about the distress we were experiencing. And from that meeting, everybody that was in the group with me were able to get housing, because it was housing issues that we were facing, because my house here in New Orleans was completely destroyed in Hurricane Katrina. And it was from that experience that I learned the power of organizing. Then I ended up getting connected to an IAF organization in Dallas area interfaith, because not only, when I got housing and my family, the people who were with me got housing, that wasn't enough for me, because I knew too many other friends and people that I knew were just suffering by not having housing. So Dallas area interfaith helped me to organize citizens that had relocated to that area, to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we championed and fought hard to make them provide housing to disaster survivors. People working together. And so with that effort, I came back to New Orleans to continue organizing. Well, really, that wasn't the end of it, because then I had to pay a mortgage for a house I couldn't live in, but I also had to pay rent on a temporary unit. So again, I went to fight with HUD and made them realize that the Section 8 program could help me and my family to pay for housing and the mortgage. Somebody had to help me because we were going under. And we fought and won. So I can know the power of folks working together, and that's why this call is here today, because I believe so vehemently that we have to be able to give people an opportunity to talk about the issues that they're facing and work together to overcome them. Like my brother Mike was saying, we have to do that. We cannot expect that paid organizers who don't have an ear to hear our voices can champion those efforts to help us be made whole. Okay, we can't expect that. And I see a lot of that happening here in the New Orleans area, where we have these folks who are not from here, who can't even relate to what's happening and the disasters that we have gone through, and don't have an ear or a temperament to even be inclusive of those who are suffering. The people who suffer the most have to be at the forefront of leading the charge to bring about change and being made whole. The people have to be involved. The power of the people is the only thing that can hold elected leadership accountable. That's the only thing. And that's the only way to make that happen. Not only just for me and my family, we're getting a refrigerator. We're getting our living expenses paid during the disaster, because we couldn't live here in the city of New Orleans. FEMA won't even do that much. So what is it? We have to work together to make it happen. And this is the forum to start that movement along, so we can have actions, we can have demonstrations. Everything, it has to be organized, and we have, because we have the people sitting here on this panel with me have a voice to hear our community. We have a voice, we have an ear to hear us working together to be able to resolve these issues that we face it. And it is achievable. And that's why I wanted to give those that too, because Dan Piper asked for an example, but even before this, we had the efforts with Dr. King, we had the efforts with Thurgood Marshall. Those things that happened then, they are still possible to happen today. Okay?
Yeah, could I, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just kind of thinking through and following up on the sort of the idea of like what can be done, what are some concrete steps we can take. I like the idea that that Mike said of having some sort of forum where we can go back, we can talk to our coworkers, we can bring folks together to kind of talk about the issues. Another kind of in addition to this, and thinking through what are some concrete steps we can then take, right? That will help us to kind of build those bonds of solidarity that I was talking before. And we've got some comrades in the union movement who've been also kind of moving forward climate solidarity statements and resolutions in their unions. So I think that might be something that we can do as well. Is like, how can we start sharing these sort of these ideas that we need sort of a transition, and we need the labor, just like Ms. Kim was saying right there, that frontline workers and those who are living in the communities that are impacted, we're going to be the ones who are getting us out of this crisis, by organizing and fighting together. So I think that could be another idea, is like getting these solidarity statements around climate, these resolutions passed in our locals, so we can also talk about the importance of the labor movement being active and involved in ways to address the solution to the climate crisis. And the last thing I'll just share is when I was living in California, I was part of a group, an initiative of many kind of rank and file workers in the union movement and other labor connections and things like this. That was called Climate Workers. And what it was basically trying to bring together rank and file workers in the unions to kind of come together and work as a network. And, we were all kind of members of this group. We decided, like Mike was saying, we need to be able to have organizations where we decide things democratically. We all came together and we would meet, we would figure out what are the actions that we're planning, how are we coming up and supporting other workers in struggle. And this was around oh man, I'm totally blanking on the pipeline right now. But anyway, it was there was the crisis, and thinking through concrete steps that we can do together. And that might be something we can kind of talk together in the forum that Mike is talking about. How do we actually build these networks among working class people that will allow us to actually fight together, get to know each other? So I think those are some other steps that we can do, or just some concrete examples, and sharing the story. So even like, let's start, let's even do interviews of everyone, who's participating in this, so we can start spreading the word and about the different campaigns, like Ms. Valerie's campaign, for example, to get reinstated, right? And the focus on what Ms. Kim was saying around the FEMA and the sort of racist response of FEMA, right? And thinking about how do we then connect those dots so that Ms. Kim isn't the only one standing out there, talking to everybody, or Ms. Valerie's going into this meeting by herself, but actually, how do we make this issue of climate crisis, how do we connect the dots and support each other in those struggles? So I think that's just, I'll leave it at that. That's something maybe we can start working on together. Mike, Ms. Kim, Ms. Valerie, maybe we can all get together with other folks in New Orleans to start thinking about what are some next steps we can do together.
Okay, good. That'll be a good step also. But also, I didn't hear, but we need to speak on this because it's very vital, that mental health. This is affecting us mentally. We're still in COVID, with hurricane season, And I'll just face it, in our city, New Orleans is like in the top 3 or top 5 tourism. So this is affecting us with finance, mentally, our housing, the environment, and we need a revenue. We need somewhere that we can go and exhale without being judged. We need somewhere to go for someone to hear us, to feel us, and will be there for us, give us information how to get help, how to get assistance, and will stand with us. That's like Kim Felicia Tracy were doing for me for years. You know, I come in with a situation, come in with a problem before I became president. I was the president of the Women Caucus then. I'm still am. But I reached out to them and they gave me information. They gave me a listening ear. Then they stood up with me. They didn't leave me by myself. You know, then I had Just Beyond, then I had the ATU International. You know, we need to reach out and help one another. But let's think about it. A person is not going to be, I want to say, personally involved until it happened to them personally, until it happened to someone that's close to them. But at the same time, we need to have somewhere to go. And this can be the place that people can come and exhale without being judged. Let them speak in their own language. Some might use profanity. I do not use profanity. I got terminated for using profanity. I do not use profanity. Okay. If they want to speak in Spanish, we have someone here to interpret it. Asian, have someone here to interpret it. But let them come in their own way, because mental health is very vital. Someone could be thinking to harm themselves or to harm someone else. And the only thing they know is this not for me. This world is not for me. Therefore, I'm going to take you out and I'm going to take me out. So sometimes someone just needs someone to listen to them and need a lending hand. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Valerie. That was great. I appreciate that. I have a couple questions in the Q&A. Just run through them here. I think we've talked about Dan's question. Can speakers discuss historic examples of situations where working people stepped in to organize a response to a crisis with an eye to what we can learn from them today? Another question is, can speakers discuss how gentrification efforts are interacting with or connected to the hurricane and the official response to the hurricane? That's a great question. And I think I'll stop there and let folks talk about the gentrification stuff, and then we'll come back to the.
I'd like to speak about gentrification too.
Okay. I think that from what I have seen personally is that developers who have moved to this community post Katrina, before Ida, have fared very well. From what I can see, and when like I said, next week I'm going to start going down to the FEMA headquarters and set up a table out there and start asking those questions to see who are the people that are coming down there, which I only see people who look like me coming down there for the most part. And I don't see those folks who I need some help with working with the federal government to find out where those funds have gone and who have benefited from them. And that is the only way we're going to know what the gentrification effect has had on Ida recovery. We know for a fact now that FEMA was very discriminatory in how they handled resources post Hurricane Katrina. The statistics showed us that. So we can't expect that a leopard is going to change his stripes. So we really have to work together, and we have to get organized to start demanding that transparency that is required to get that information. And it is available to the community through the Freedom of Information Act, which is a law. But we're going to have some teeth to being able to stand, speak truth to power. And this format that we're talking on right now is a great foundation to move towards making that kind of information transparent to everybody. And you would think that FEMA wouldn't behave in this manner after they were discovered after Katrina, being so biased on who they provided support to. And then here we are in Ida 2021, and the same things appear to be happening again. So yeah, this forum is a place that can definitely move toward. I'd like to hear what my other co-panelists have to say about that, especially Paulino.
What was that last part you said, Kim?
That the importance of being able to find out who the federal dollars are going towards supporting in the aftermath of Ida, and that being something that is important for us to know, and that we can organize around getting that information.
Okay, Mike wanted to speak, and I'm guessing Paulino wants to speak. And Mike, go ahead. You have to unmute. Mike, unmute.
Okay. Central to the fight against gentrification in a disaster zone is securing the right of every disaster survivor to be made whole again in terms of housing. Because it's the purging of disaster survivors from their homes that is the spearhead of gentrification that follows a disaster. That's exactly what we saw in New Orleans after Katrina, where the mother of all gentrification campaigns, which was the destruction of public housing, was key to the gentrification. We fought against that because we fought for the right of return. So whenever there's a disaster, there's two things people who are interested in fighting gentrification need to keep in mind. One, they need to demand that all disaster survivors, especially working class and middle class disaster survivors, are made whole again in housing, that the feds pay for every penny of that disaster, that they're given the resources that they need to build their home in a timely fashion, whether it's an apartment or a private home, whatever. Secondly, there is the situation of don't ever fall for the plan that we can build a bigger, better New Orleans, San Francisco, Philadelphia, or whatever. All right. When you're in a disaster zone, what you want is everybody to be made a whole again. They can call it the same old crappy New Orleans or Philadelphia or whatever. That's what you want. I mean, you can't deliver it, but your goal has to be, you have to be like a pit bull and just say, we are not compromising on this demand. And so that's where actually a big chunk of the fighting for the right of return was the right of return movement in New Orleans. And that's where we did get a lot of militants. We won one battle. We got Iberville reopened. It's one of the 5 developments, lost the other 4. But that will hit. And so I could go over and over again, but you can be sure high on the list of demands is one, that every disaster survivor has the emergency housing that they need for as long as they need, as close as possible to the disaster zone. And 2, that there is a guarantee that the federal government steps in and pays for the rebuilding of their homes. If that doesn't happen, gentrification will hit, and it will hit hard. We learned that in New Orleans, and you can apply to any other city in the disaster area. Thanks.
Valerie, do you want to weigh in?
Yes. Oh, I thought Pauline, but I can speak. Go back to the question is, can the speaker discuss the historical examples of the situation of the organizers? So I'm gonna go back to the question that is, well, I can tell you, I started out in my church. I started out joining the women ministry, the youth ministry, started learning how to organize and how to gather people together for a common cause, a common reason, for everybody to be on the same page. Then when I started working at RTA, I got active in labor. I got active in labor and started going to the meetings and started attending the committee meetings and the community meetings and see the needs of the community, see the needs of the riders, see what time that they need the buses to come and what location we need to be. Then I started talking with the operators, my co-workers, to find out what we need out there while we driving these vehicles, while we operating the streetcars and the paratransit. Then I got elected to a executive board position. Then I learned how to, like Kim and Pauline and Mike was saying, learn the ins and outs of the laws. But first, you have to want to be involved. You have to sacrifice. It's a lot of sacrifice. Time is very precious because that one time you will never get back. So like 10 minutes ago, we're not gonna get 10 minutes back. We only can move forward. So that's how I started learning how to organize. You have to be able to be available. You have to listen. You have to do your homework. You have to do your research. Because when people ask you questions, you need to give an answer to say, okay, I don't know the answer right now, but I will get back with you. And make sure you get back to the person who you're talking to, because people want to have information. People want to know if somebody's there for them. Then the person who organizes have to make that person accountable. Don't be no handicap for that person. Get that person who interested, get them to join. Get them to join and find out what their schedule is. Get them to invite their family, invite their friends, because it's not about us. It's about all of us together in the community. But we have to make the government accountable of their action. We have to make FEMA accountable of their action. We have to make the local government accountable of their action, because nobody is not here alone. God made all of us be connected together for we can work together, for we can keep moving, for we can be prosper. We cannot prosper by ourselves. We cannot live abundant life, a joyful life by ourselves. We need each other. A person only gonna do what you allow them to do. So if you can organize, or if you could speak to someone or talk to someone, listen to someone, that's how I started by organizing or being with someone that know about organizing. That's how I started about organizing. Thank you.
I know.
Yeah, well, I think what the other speakers and panelists, I think, did a really good job of addressing this. I think just to the point, I think that for Ms. Kim, I was reading an article about the way in which when disasters happen and the sort of racial inequities of the way in which when people are actually trying to get the FEMA money, and many white people are actually getting making money off of the disaster, or not making money, but like they'll get money and a little bit more back. Whereas many Black and other people of color, who there's been, these statistics that will actually reveal that they weren't, people are using their savings, they're getting no money, they're getting rejected automatically. And, we would go around and we were talking to people, and we had neighborhoods telling us, make sure you apply for FEMA, make sure you do this. So that idea of like getting the word out is very important, but these inequities exist. And I think if we can develop sort of through our connections and organizing, a fight back to say, just like Mike was saying, making sure that people get made whole for this, because I know coworkers who are still out of their homes. I know people that I'm working with who ended up, they're paying out of pocket all this money for all these, you know, the damages. And of course, there's like scammers out there who are trying to take advantage and all that type of stuff. But that's why the more that we can connect with each other and figure out and come up with some demands of how are we going to actually, you know, fight. And for example, energy, we know we're going to be seeing increases in our energy bills, right? And so why not start demanding also from energy to say, we aren't paying more for, we're not going to pay for this crisis. They're making billions of dollars in profits over the last couple of years, and they should be the ones who are actually, you know, putting the money back and you know, providing the people what they need. So I'll leave it at that, and I think that the question is really important.
Thank you, Paul. I have one more question in the Q&A. Can speakers talk on ways they've seen corporations or the state try to take advantage of people post-disaster? One speaker mentioned that there's often a lot of opportunism after a disaster like this. So, yeah. Who wants to, anybody want to answer that?
John, I want to piggyback on, wait a minute, about the hurricane or the officials responding to the hurricane.
Yeah.
I can tell you for a fact that when we reached out to the Mayor Contrell, the operators did, she came to our rescue. I told her thank you privately, and I'm telling her thank you right here on this forum. I cannot tell you about anyone else, but some of us, the operators, had needed I want to say a place to stay, or because we was living in the dark, but at the same time we had to get up and push those buses for 12 hours. And when we got off, we didn't have nowhere to go get no gas. We didn't, you know, we didn't have no food. So she did supply, made a way for RTA to get us some food. Then she applies for gas where we can go to the hotel or go to the our resident areas where our family and friends, because the majority of our house was down, including mine, was down. So we stayed with our family and our friends. So the local government, the city councilman, they stepped up to the plate, and also the mayor. Well, we have a problem with RTA did not agree to the payment after we came through. The union and the company signed a payment agreement, and RTA did not honor it. So thank you, and I just want to say that.
Mike, did you want to say something?
Hi, if I could talk now.
Yeah, go.
Look, when you have a major disaster, money is flying around, billions and billions of dollars. And so I found the best bet to check opportunism is, first you have to have like some sort of mass organization that's conducted in a democratic and transparent fashion. Democratic is good, and so is transparent, but they're necessary together. Because when it came to the public housing struggle, which I'm most familiar with after Katrina, it was the deals done behind the back of the mass decision-making body that were the knives that got stabbed deepest in the back of the working class people. We have to have a mass organization that's democratic and transparent. Most importantly, and nobody's comfortable dealing with this, is we have to know where the members of the group, especially the leaders, are getting their money from. Because in a disaster, you can be sure there will be developers and real estate interests and other people that will be bribing people. We had that with Hurricane Katrina afterwards. And nobody on the left wants to admit that we've got a corruption problem. But when you're in a disaster, the money's floating around. So you need a democratic and transparent organization to make the decisions. Also, you need that to galvanize the people, because if you go up to FEMA or whoever without any support, they just blow you off. And if you really want to win battles, and we came close to winning some big battles in public housing, we only won one big one, but you got to be willing to go out there. Like one thing we did was we were going to occupy St. Bernard housing development. There were about 1,000 units there. And it could, anyways, this is after the storm. And somebody behind the scenes made a decision and told people in contradiction to what had been decided at the mass meeting that we weren't going to occupy St. Bernard housing development. And somehow the word got out. And that was, I think, the single biggest tragedy, because I think had we occupied St. Bernard at that point in time, we could have gotten 1,000 more units of low-income affordable housing reopened at a time when they were needed most. But there was wheeling and dealing behind the scenes. We have to have democracy, transparency, and then a willingness for the mass organizations to put those into practice. But we also have to be real. This is capitalist USA. Money flies. And I don't care how radical somebody says, you base on what they do, not what they say. Because people, a lot of people who were good radicals can get bought off. But that's why you have a mass organization and you make decisions democratically and transparently. One, to hear what the people want, are willing to do, but two, to make sure it gets done. So that's just what I have to say about that. But yeah, the corruption, it's in a disaster zone, you got that, and it's a problem at every level.
I totally agree with Mike. It's accountability. Accountability, you know, when this disaster comes, our health, our protection, transportation, housing, and food. Those 5 things that we know we need of. And we know that wherever disaster hit, the federal government have agencies and have funds to take care of the people. We are the tax people. We're only getting our money that we paid in. Let's think about it. We pay taxes every year. You pay taxes on your food. You pay taxes on your land, your property, your home. Even when you get a check, you pay taxes. So you're just getting your money back. So when that happened, we just need to make the people who have authority positions, the local government, the government, make them accountable of their action. And when the people come together, we have a stronger voice when more people come together. The numbers count. The numbers is very powerful. So we need to make them accountable of their action towards us, the people, God creation. No, God didn't make no one person in control of our money. That's our money. I pay taxes every month. I pay taxes every 2 weeks when I get a check. Well, I was getting a check, you know, Kim. Now I'm not getting a check. But nevertheless, certain things I just don't blame all on the government, because we the people, we have to speak loud and clear what we need and what we want. We need to make them accountable. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Valerie. That was, yeah. Any of the other panelists want to speak right now, or? Let's see, I think we have another question in the Q&A. From Jay Arena, where does Sister Jefferson's case now stand? Could you talk briefly about her case, context of firing, did she get her job back, and how those outside of New Orleans can show solidarity?
Thank you, Brother Jay. Right now I'm still terminated. I was supposed to, the company and I supposed to talk tomorrow. I always ask for prayers. You can send letters in to the city councilman, the transportation of New Orleans committee. You can send letters in to the mayor office, Mayor Cottrell. You also can send letters in RTA commissioners. The more letters come in, the more calls, more emails. That's how powerful we are. Just like I just said, the higher the number, the powerful, the stronger we are together in solidarity. And also, I will keep everyone updated of the outcome of tomorrow conversation, meeting that I will have with the company. But Brother Jay, that's how I can ask for your all support. because now RTA is not, I'm going to say not all RTA executive, from the interim COO, the D's, the deputy CEO, and the CEO is not recognizing the union leadership. At this time, the union leadership is me. So they're not recognizing me as the labor leader of the operators. And the operators department, we are the largest. We have over 500 employees there. And this is affecting right now we're in negotiation, the pension involved, our health insurance involved, everything is involved in our working daily operations there. There is not very pleasant there at this time because of the situation was going on right now. So we is not working in good faith. RTA is not working in good faith with labor. There's ATU Local 1560. We have 3 unions there on their property. We have IBEW, we have ULU, and we have ATU. ATU have the largest members there at their property. And RTA is not working with us in good faith like we was working with them in good faith because we know our role. Our role here in New Orleans is the transportation of our precious passengers. We look at it like this. Our ridership need us. We need our ridership to keep this city moving. We pick up our elderly, we pick up hospitality, doctors, lawyers, teachers, students. We pick up the people that keep New Orleans rolling. RTA is blocking their prosperity, blocking their productivity to keep rolling. So yes, Jay, thank you for asking that question. Yes, we need you to write, to email, and to call the mayor office, Mayor Cottrell, City of New Orleans Council, City Councilmen, and RTA commissioners. Yes, thank you so very much. And keep praying.
Thank you, Valerie. Yeah, we're getting down to where we have to close for the evening. And I would know you just spoke, Valerie, but I wondered if any of the other panelists would like to close out with a couple of minutes, just final statements. We could start with Mike, and if you want.
Yeah, I'd like to. Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'd just like to encourage everybody to remember 3 words: four. Working class disaster recovery team. I know it sounds hokey or like a commercial, but we need to set up a network. Paulino's talking about networks in every major city, probably in all the countryside too. But if you're in New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles or Atlanta, it's not just New Orleans or Houston, Denver, you need to set up a network for a working class disaster recovery team. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to throw everything you have into it right away, but when the crisis hits, or if the crisis, in all likelihood, we have crises are now hitting. We have the Pacific, well, the West, you've got the wildfires, of course, on the coast. We have the hurricanes on the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. And then you have what these, I forget the name of derechos, inland hurricanes. And they could cause devastation all over the place, but mainly in the Midwest and the upper South, though one came and went all the way from the north of North Dakota down to California and wrecked their electrical system down there. Everywhere where we have a left, where we have unions, blah, 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 we need to set up a working class disaster recovery team that is specifically answers to and is run by the working class. So when the disaster hits and everybody for a while is going to be just in a state of shock and trauma, they know they can at least automatically kind of gravitate towards that and begin the struggle to build a working class working class recovery alternative. And that will make a difference if we can mobilize the people. And of course, we want revolution, but this side of revolution, well, we want to continue to be in the class struggle, just not abstain until we're finally on the barricades of power. Okay, thank you.
I can go next. All right. Okay. Well, I just want to thank again the Revolutionary Socialist Network for putting on this panel. Really glad we're all able to come together, hear about these stories, and then think like, how can we then go back to our work sites, go back to our communities, start building these connected communities of solidarity for these times of crisis and beyond? How do we develop our capacities to support each other? And like, I'm thinking of what Valerie was saying around the mental health. One of the things, I had never been through an experience like this before. I'm still pretty new to the New Orleans area. And actually going through and looking together and talking with my neighbors who had gone through the experiences of Katrina, and seeing the way in which that trauma comes back out. We definitely need that mental health support. We need the health care to be able to be provided for the people. And we need to be able to start learning of the experiences, coming together, then building those solidarity of support and fighting back. So just like what Mike was saying, I think it's really important for us to stay connected, for us to start building these networks, organizing, and fighting back and fighting for a better future, because we don't deserve this. We are the working class people, the frontline workers. Just like Mike was saying, we're going to continue to see more the devastation from the climate crisis get worse, right? And I think what's really important is that we actually get to know each other, build these organizations, build our solidarity, and fight back for a better future that we all need. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. And once again, my name is Paulino, member of Workers' Voice. My union is the Jefferson Federation of Teachers. I'm an educator here in the New Orleans area. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone that joined with us this afternoon. Thank you for all the questions that you asked. Just thank you for yet another opportunity for us to collaborate and talk about injustice, because this is the front line, the first line. And we often talk about second line here in New Orleans, but now we are the first line. And before you have to become the first line, just like Mike said, you have to be, you have to pre-think this and be prepared, because global warming is a real thing that we are experiencing, where we see communities who have never had hurricanes are now forced to have hurricanes. I remember after Katrina, they said, why would you want to go back there? So now they can really understand and be able to realize how important it is to be prepared. So thanks to each and every one of the panelists. Thank you, John, for being the host. I'm honored to be able to be in this forum today, and because we're setting a statement to our leadership that either you're going to help to resolve these issues, that you're going to be proactive about doing real organizing and preparedness for the disasters that we're facing, or you're going to have to get out of office. It's just clear and simple. So thanks, everyone. And I'll be out talking about FEMA. So if you want to follow me on Facebook, I'm Kim P. Ford. Also Tree Shakers radio talk show. And you can reach me 504-248-8594. Thanks. I'm looking forward to airing this also on the Tree Shakers radio talk show. So when you send me a copy, John, I will gladly be able to do. I'm so happy about that. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of the Revolutionary Socialist Network, I'd like to thank the panelists and the audience for coming tonight and for participating in this great discussion. And there's so much more that we have to do in the future. Check out the RSN. We're a national network of revolutionary socialists, and together we can change the world. Thank you very much, everybody.